This conference will now be recorded.
All right, call this meeting together of the Emergency Preparedness Commission at 5:30-ish. Okay, did everybody get their minutes and the agenda? Got all that? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda for February 27th?
The minutes? I don't recall you talking to us about a water purifying system. And it's in the minutes. And I was like, does anybody else remember talking about a water purifying?
Well, Jeff
System and training?
originally said it was going to be a water purification thing, and then it turned out to be a shower.
Jeff wasn't able to be here, and so
Right.
he gave me some information about stuff he was going to bring in a truck. That was one of the things he was going to bring to put in the container, but that hasn't happened, and I don't know if he's going to make it
Showers
this
in the
evening
container.
either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what it was? With showers?
That's what we ended up with.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know how he,
Because that's in the minutes incorrectly, because it's not,
at the time,
Not
it was what it was.
maybe we were supposed to talk about it, but we didn't.
Okay, so that's under 4 new business. He plans to place a truck portable water filtration system into the Cedar Terrace Fire Station's emergency container and schedule a training on its use. So Gary, you're saying that that isn't what it was a shower instead.
Yeah,
But at the time, we didn't know it.
that's what he told me.
Hmm.
And that's what it was at the meeting. And then what showed up at the
Oh,
It was
container
something
ended
else,
up
so.
being,
I think it's still accurate because of that.
okay. Well, then I move we approve the minutes.
Okay.
second.
All those in favor, unless you have any more discussion on it?
I have no point of comparison. I wasn't here, so I'll pass.
All right. All those are, Harry,
I wasn't here at the last meeting, so
but do you want to approve the minutes?
I can't approve them
Oh, that's
because
true.
I wasn't here to hear
That's
anything.
true. That's true. And Gordon, okay. Gary,
Yes.
Dick, you were online, weren't you, at that meeting?
Yes, he was.
Mm-hmm.
So
Does it look okay, Dick? Do you approve of it, the minutes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
With amendments, is the corrections? Is that what you're asking me? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
we're just
there were no
voting on the
corrections.
minutes. Do we approve the minutes? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Now we go.
Done.
Thank you, Mari.
That's the way to get her done.
I thought you were reviewing the minutes because you hadn't done so.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
was waiting for you. Okay. Any public comments at this time?
I want to introduce Deanna Brennan, and she's going to be a liaison to the city council. Welcome.
So Deanna's going to be a liaison. I thought you were the liaison.
There's going to be 2 of us.
Okay, then we should refer to the original ordinance because I just read it before I came here. And it talks about the person who is on the commission is also the representative, the liaison to the city council. So that's the wording that I read in there. Not that I disagree, I just have recently read it.
Yeah, I think that's how I recall John Huddle. Remember us talking about that.
While we're waiting, I don't know if you guys have ever seen many pictures of grocery stores after earthquakes, but this is a small store after a smallish earthquake in, this is probably in Scotia. It was that one that was down off Mendocino
Right,
months ago.
101.
And, so when you talk about, we'll get groceries from the grocery store.
Okay,
With the
so
shovel.
this
Looks
would
like my pantry.
be under the emergency response. At that time, it was called Response Commission, and we changed the name, of course, but in here it's referencing the Emergency Response Commission. 2.10.030. This is qualifications. And number 2 under that, not more than one member of the commission shall be a member of the Common Council, said member to be a voting member. The member of the Common Council shall also act as council liaison.
So, use that, but it doesn't say you can't have another liaison from the
Yes, it
city.
does. It says not more than one
On the
member of the
council, she's
commission.
not on the council.
But she was going to be a liaison, so
She can't vote.
I'm just reading what it says.
I can still give insight, but I can't vote.
Sure.
And that's.
My confusion here is then we have 2 liaisons, because Gary, you're the appointed liaison, correct?
Mhm. But I don't think it hurts at all having another liaison. And
I don't either. I appreciate the fact that someone else is in the audience. So I just wanted to clarify that that's what the this requires. Okay. No public comments at this time. And under new business, I want to add an item. If everyone is in agreement, we have a resignation. Jim Howe has resigned from the commission. So we will need to formally accept his resignation, which was an email. Basically, we need to turn that email over to the city.
to Joseph.
So,
I move that we accept Jim Howe's resignation from the EPC board.
Second.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll need clarification on that.
You say all those in favor, then you say all those opposed, and then you say any abstentions.
Yes,
and
I
then you're
understand
done.
that, but the city, the other commission and the city council do it differently. They do it by person, correct?
But they're individually voted in members. I think that's so people can check their voting record.
I'm okay with it. We had been doing it differently, so that's fine with me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just-
good. And then I know, Gary, you were gonna maybe contact someone else to see if they were
I
interested.
contacted Robin, and she was going to come, and then she got tied up at work. So
She what?
got tied up at work.
Okay.
As far as a representation in different roles, we're supposed to have, I don't know, 3 from the city, 1 from at
Right.
large, 1 from the urban growth boundary. What do we need?
So within the city, 4 from within the city, 1 fire district boundary. Is that you?
That's me.
Okay, so that's Mari. Within the city, me, Gary, Dick, Gordon, and Harry. But is anybody within the county as well? Because you can actually,
We're all in the county.
Yeah. Be a little tricky if you weren't.
well, I'm not in the county.
I think we needed somebody from outside the urban, or in the urban growth boundary. but
Urban growth
not in the
boundary,
city.
1 person. Curry County boundary, 1 person. 1 person fire district, and 4 from the city.
So basically, we need to find somebody who's not living in the city.
Mhm.
But they can be inside the
Other
urban
than you.
growth boundary.
Yeah,
Well, that's who we'll look for.
because I think Robin, doesn't she live in town?
She lives in town, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that, how to divvy this out to see who would qualify. So if you know anyone, especially outside in the county area.
Maybe we keep Clark back.
Hmm?
Maybe we keep Clark back.
He's
overwhelmed.
He's reducing his
Yeah.
He's overwhelmed.
load, unfortunately.
That would be nice, but
He's covered up pretty well.
yeah, it's hard to find volunteers. It's difficult, and so many people have already been volunteering in a number of ways.
I'm 100 feet from the city line. I might be able to stretch that a little bit.
Yeah, just hop over.
Okay, and then we probably should review our terms, and when they expire. There was a strange way that everyone was supposed to
It's kind of staggered.
be set for a particular term in the beginning. I'm not sure where we are with regard to that now, but maybe Gary, you and I can figure out the terms here, and then whoever replaces Jim will serve out the remainder of his term.
See, yeah.
Okay.
I wrote that down somewhere.
All right. Okay, it doesn't appear that Jeff is here. He said he might show up late to give his report, but in this weather, he probably won't. So then for B, the wish list. Now, this wish list, we'll talk about it, and then we'll talk about presenting this to the fire district board. So Gary and I were approached by Sylvia from the Health and Human Services Division of the state, located in Medford. She's the liaison for us there. So she needed a wish list from us immediately, right away, within 24 hours. So that was kind of hard to come up with. But we came up with a list, and I think you were all sent that list at one time. And then after the fact, Gary and I met, and we had some reservations about the wish list and our role as far as what was on there versus the county role and what was relevant to them on the list. And so, Gary, did you want to talk about that at all?
Well, I think it would be good to get a group together to come up with, to really go over a wish list and with more time and because I just did the best I could. But her agency isn't sure if they're going to get any money or not, but if they do get the money, then they want to be prepared. So it's and on it, we didn't have anything specific, but we had communications gear and we kind of guesstimated some amounts.
It totaled about $50,000, but in looking back on it, some of those things, shelter, hygiene stations, cots, blankets, emergency radios, all of those kinds of things, we could put in a shelter that hopefully we have for the 9th Street property ultimately. So we can deal with that. Communications, we put some communications base radio station for City Hall, handheld radios, satellite phone setup and some hardening for KUPO radio station for
Did
their
you-
power outages.
Did you submit at all any of the stuff that Harry provided? He had that beautiful list and what everything cost for the ham operation, which I think is probably very important.
The list I have was one for a new station up on Coast Guard Hill at
It'd be
one
the
time.
same thing no matter where you put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're going to wind up doing here is, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Sylvia yet, is to see if we can't substitute some things in here. Because some of them, especially if it comes to the climate control for the emergency containers and those kinds of things, that's county. And if we get the money and if we use it for that, the county will deal with that. We won't deal with it. So that I want to talk to her about changing a few of these out, given the fact that it was last minute that she wanted us to do this. There is some ham radio gear that I think we mentioned in this, but we'll have to itemize these things out. I've never put together a list like this for funding where you have to, we didn't even have time to estimate the costs on these things. It was just kind of pie in the sky thinking about it. But it totaled $50,000. The funding for this, they've already funded $10 million worth of projects in the past, and they're anticipating quite a bit of money coming in again. They're not sure if it'll be that amount. They want to use it pretty much entirely for the coastal communities because they realize that they've been ignored for quite a while, and there's special needs there along the coast. So I think if it happens right away, which it could, these kinds of things, we could get an announcement in a week, could be a month, it could be not at all. So that's kind of what we were up against.
Is this a grant for the city, for their preparedness, or for the county?
No.
Recipient of the grant?
It's, and I'm not sure, it would have to go through the city, the funding for it. And it would be for this list. It would be $50,000 and it would have to be accounted for on this list.
She didn't give us any details really on the actual.
So we don't know.
Curry County also applied for funds, but there were, as I recall, two large things that Jeff wanted. One was a vehicle. He put in for a vehicle and something else. It might have been a trailer. So it was that type of thing that he was shooting for.
It's really kind of odd, the things that they actually fund and what they don't fund.
Right.
They wouldn't fund helping us develop that property.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a thing we discussed at the fire board meeting, was that getting more stuff when we don't have a good setup for the stuff we got now is not probably the best move.
So we can move on to that next item on the agenda here, which is the Port Orford Fire District Board meeting that Gary and I attended, and Mari was very helpful in pulling it together quickly because we needed to get them involved in this and we needed to get their approval and get a sense of what they would allow on that property up on Vista and what their interest was in working with us. So thank you, Mari, for doing that.
Yeah, and I just want to really emphasize this because we talked a lot about radios and radio frequencies up there. Not what the fire board does, what the fire department does. If you have action items like you want to do training with this water purifier, that's the fire department, not the board. The board, if you want to annex property into the fire district, that's what we do. If you want to talk about the new fire trucks we're going to buy, that's what we do. We don't have anything to do with the physical training or action on the fire department. I don't know until Dave Duncan hands me the monthly list what calls they went on. That's not what the fire board does. We approve funding for building maintenance, machinery, equipment, and personnel, and we take care of tax issues. So any of these things that you want to address as far as interaction with the city and the fire department on the radios, Dave Duncan, fire department. The people who serve on the board, most of them don't have any firefighting experience. You can't ask them in, a confident way to run a fire operation. They're not incident commanders. They're not firefighters. They're board members, like a hospital board. They're not doctors on there. They're members of the community that manage the money. So think about what you want to do. It's like one of the things that's coming up with this container that I can see we're going to get pushed into, and I'll be dealing with Jeff Hughes on this, is we have to have a contract regarding this container, specifying who's responsible if it gets broken into, damaged, vandalized. If there's a time when it's decided it's no longer needed, who's responsible for removing it?
Contract with who?
With the county or with whoever owns the container, because we don't own that container. We don't own the stuff in it. All the fire board decided to do was to allot a certain amount of space for it to sit there. And so if he, like if Jeff Hughes wants to do this water training, Dave Duncan, that's who you talk to, not Joe Marsh, not me, not Gary Anderson. We don't plan that stuff. All we do is the money.
It was important to get a sense, and I know that what I heard clearly was that the board did not want a lot of activity around that fire station
The
because in an
neighborhood
emergency.
has made that clear, yeah.
But in an emergency, you want to make sure that the emergency responders have access to it and they're not hindered by a lot of people getting supplies or congregating around there. So we did get that, and that's important for us to get that kind of direction. The other thing that came out of that meeting was to work on a common frequency, and Dave Duncan, Chief Duncan, was there, and I think he's willing to do that and get together with city employees and hopefully you, Dick, as well, and Harry, to work on those frequencies. It's just a matter of calling a meeting at some point to do that.
Well, I don't like to talk about frequencies and that so much as an operational plan, because that will suggest what can be used for doing that. Or normally it's not going to be tactical frequencies because those are busy and they don't like foreigners in there. They don't know the protocols and all that. But what I don't see, and I was thinking about some of these items on here, particularly in the communications area, is the operating protocols. How do we envision that the city will interact with the fire districts? As far as incident command, I see the city actually, and I'm thinking about it being the last resort for that, because they don't do that. Fire service, every fire is an incident in effect. So they routinely have in an incident command environment. Police oftentimes, particularly in larger cities where they have civil disorder, they're operating in an incident command environment. The only thing the city is really available for or experienced in would be the management of what they have authority over. That's to be water and highways. The city take care of the roads in the city. Who does that?
City.
City, I would think so. So they would be a player in that role, obviously interacting. So what I didn't see here, well, two things. One, I didn't see how the communications propagates between the agencies. And second, I was thinking, is there a guideline or some examples of some things that they funded? So we ask for things that are likely to get funded. And again, I'm looking at radio, base station for City Hall, which I think is important. I think there should be one. But who else would they communicate with in order to be functional with the county? Same radio or different radio? That's a protocols problem, and we need to understand that. And at this point, I don't know what players are or who they are in terms of who talks to who. So,
And that's what I'm trying to clarify, is that Gary's wish was that the city trucks be able to talk to on the same frequency to the fire department. And I explained to him that the fire department has frequencies they work on when they're on scene that's different from one that they're trying to contact on a county level. We do have a base station that we can talk to dispatch over in the fire department at this time. So, I mean, setting up another one in here seems superfluous to me, unless you want to talk to somebody besides dispatch. Like you said, who are you going to talk to? Who do you want to talk to with these radios? And the person you need to talk to about that is Dave Duncan. That's your contact person for understanding that. That's the person who's going to be in charge of that. That's the person who's going to be communicating with other fire departments if it's a large fire. He's also going to be the one who's going to have the communications for contacting Coos Forest Protection or the Forest Service or any of the air tankers that might be flying. That's the person who runs that and has that expertise.
Are city police tied into the fire department system?
No, that's another channel, but they have that on their some of their handhelds.
Okay.
And,
well, it reminds me of a situation when I was on a board in California for CAL FIRE. And at first, everybody wanted to have radios to talk to everybody else. I said, it doesn't work that way.
right.
They have strike teams and independent entities that function internally, and then a channel of communications to the IC to the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pretty good at that. Fire does that all the time. Most of the other agencies are not so much involved in routine incidents. So I guess that's what we need to understand. Who would the city need to coordinate with? I can see him coordinating.
Dave Duncan.
I understand that. But outside of the fire service, for other services or needs of the
It
city,
would be Jeff, I would
they
think,
have to come through the county.
with the county. Mhm.
And that would probably be running through dispatch, because I think that's all the county has.
Well,
We
if
need to
that's
find
true,
out.
and I've asked him, what channels do you expect to use? They don't know. He hasn't given me an answer on that yet. But I understand what you're saying. It's very true. So there is a requirement locally with fire, with utilities, for example. And once it's into that world, then they take care of everything in their world.
Right.
And for needs that are outside the community, or the city needs resources, those would typically flow through the county. Then the county being the designated legal entity for coordinating with the state
Right.
in turn to the feds. So that needs to be addressed.
Well, I think the idea was that we have a committee of sorts, that the players in this get together and talk about what they have and don't have and coordinate that. That hasn't been done. So if we can move in that direction so that we understand what all these players are responsible for and what they can and can't do, we need to do that.
Well, Jeff is working on that. I don't think he's quite there yet. And that's true. And I was thinking in terms of a base station, things that they fund, can they be used for something besides the emergency service only? Do they have to sit on the shelf until there's an emergency, or can they be used? Because what I've seen happen so many times is emergency supplies and communications in particular, it doesn't work when you need it because nobody uses it daily.
Right.
So if there was a base station here, and I think they need it now with the units out there, there's 5 radios. Are they in yet, by the way?
No.
Well, we got 5 radios to go in vehicles. I think as a minimum, we need a base station in the city hall. And the same frequency capability in the trailer.
Well, you were saying that the base station in the fire department would suffice. for
Yeah,
down-
it actually, it's 6,700. That's the base, and you can, it doesn't have all the diversity, but it has enough that you can talk to dispatch and to other fire departments. But once again, it's limited by propagation of radio waves, which is frequently limited. We can talk to Gold Beach with that one.
Mhm.
But, I think what Dick is saying is that if you don't regularly use the radios in the utility trucks for the city, then you don't know whether they work or not. And the city needs to do that rather than
Testing,
come over here and can we borrow your base station for a while?
would it make sense to, if we are funded and if we can get a new base station that might be an update from what they have at the fire department, if we can trade that out with the fire department down here and then maybe locate the old one up on Vista Drive, just because if there's a tsunami and the base station gets wiped out, would we need a backup for that?
Well, the thing that would cause a tsunami to reach here would be in full rip 9.0, and this building would be a pile of rubble. So,
Mhm.
that's reality. You could think about that, but once again, I think what Dick is trying to say is that the city needs to have their own setup so that it gets regularly used, so that the people using them in the trucks, which is not always going to be John Isadora and Wade Phillips, it's going to be other people 20 years from now, 40 years from now. And you need those people to have, knowledge of those radios also.
Mhm.
Am I quoting you correctly that you think the city needs to have its own setup? Or am I not getting that?
I don't quite understand the question. Are they having what?
I don't want to misspeak for you, but what I'm trying to do is interpret it that you're saying that the city needs to have its own base station regularly talking to its own utility trucks,
Yes.
rather than just saying we can go over and borrow theirs once in a while, because you can't just use it in emergencies. You got to use it, you got to test it once a week.
I don't see that being a convenient thing, but obviously I'm sure that it would work,
Mhm.
but they still need a channel to talk on that doesn't interfere with fire service.
Right, right.
And if the transmitter is on one channel for the city, they're missing out on what's going on in the fire service. And in an incident, that's not a good thing.
No,
And you look at some of these ICs, and even in the chief cars, they've got 4 radios or 5 radios in the back of those things. So I guess the main thing now is what will they fund? Do they have some examples of what they funded in that arena so we don't ask for things that they're already obviously going to go thumbs down on, like the property thing?
It really seemed like it was equipment of some sort. That's why the list
the
is
things
primarily
on-
shelter and cots and blankets, and
Things
there's
for people.
emergency radios. There's there's a power supply that I think with solar panels, rechargeable batteries. They're mostly pieces of equipment.
Okay, well, there again, I looked at the solar thing too. What do we want to do with the solar? Do we intend to support an IC, radios, lights, some electronic equipment? That would determine the configuration and the sizing of what we need and the batteries to go with it, because solar doesn't work very well at night. So those are some things where we need to understand the operation, and perhaps even fire,
I think we were going to put them by the containers. Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, and I'm hearing what you're saying is that it can't be a set and forget thing. We have to utilize it regularly, at least in a testing format. And if we just put it up there by the Cedar Terrace Fire Hall, and then once every 6 months, somebody goes, yeah, there's kind of not many leaves on it. You know, you don't know if the batteries are charging, you know, you have to, any of these systems have to be
Maintained.
used enough that you can tell that they're actually working.
Exactly.
Mhm.
We're on the same page.
Yes.
Well, anyway, those are the things that we need to know to come up with an effective list. Same with the ham gear, you know, some of the digital services now, and I don't know what exactly, you know, you guys have in mind, but it's good to have a little justification. We need this because we're going to communicate with somebody else or whoever it is, the state level or whoever it is.
Yeah. And I think that that's why I would like to put more emphasis on ham equipment, because you've talked about in case, Carol, you've talked about in case we need to communicate, you know, with other things. And a lot of times, you know, even with with a communication setup that we have here, you can't talk to Gold Beach, you know, and if you're talking, because we have such limited line of sight capacity here because of the geography, you're gonna have to think that that stuff just isn't, you know, my experience with the fire department is, you know, it's like, oh, good, the radio works. I can actually talk to somebody. But, you know, there's a lot of big mountains around, and the only thing getting over them is ham.
That's right. This list that you put together, Harry, on the equipment for Coast Guard Hill, do you have, or can you put together a list of what you need for replacement on what you have now, or in addition to what you have now, apart from a new
This is a totally
station?
separate list. This doesn't have anything to do with our current trailer.
Right, right. So we don't know yet if we can, I have that list here, and we don't know yet if we can have a completely different setup on Coast Guard Hill, correct? And that's what this list was.
Right, which we had discussed putting it up on 9th Street. Where
That's
they're
right,
gonna
we
put the
did.
container.
Ah,
This list doesn't care where it's located,
okay.
you know.
So I think then we need to, or I'll go back to Sylvia and see how we can change this up. There were some things that we put in here, the power supply, but we did talk to her about a base radio for City Hall and at the KUPO station. And why we put that in was in the past, you've told us how many of the people along the river there,
Yeah,
including
but you
yourself-
misunderstood. You're talking KUPO, that's the local radio station 105.5. I'm talking about JPR, Jefferson Public Radio, subsidiary of NPR.
Mhm.
They have a translator, I think on Iron Mountain. I'm not exactly sure where their translator goes out regularly. It has two stations that you can, 89.3 and 90.5, I think. And then they've got an 88.5 that covers the Coos Bay area. And though, as a public radio station, those are the ones that run the regular emergency broadcast. And pretty regularly, a couple times a week, you will hear them test. I have never heard 105 test emergency broadcast. It's a specific thing. You won't forget it, especially if you have the radio up really loud.
Well,
Um,
but to some extent, I can see that KUPO could help with getting information out there.
Within this radius, you
Yes.
can hear it, you can get that almost to Langlois. You may not be able to get it up the rivers. You can get it about fire station-ish up there.
Yeah, but that's just another communication.
Yeah, and I brought
Possibility.
it up because the emergency person here at the time, whatever the second or third one was,
Mhm.
during the fire, I was like, nothing. I mean, I heard emergency broadcasts for Douglas County on JPR, and here on the sheriff is evacuating people off Elk River Road and nothing's coming over. And I go, why didn't you? Oh, well, we don't get it in Gold Beach. I'm like, yeah, well.
So there were a few things under communication, handheld radios, satellite phone setup, and to harden KUPO radio station for power outages. So those were kind of what we were looking at. But I will check with Sylvia to see if we can work around some of this stuff, staying within that $50,000 bracket now that we have more time to look at that and deal with it, and maybe look at prices as well, and see if we can't do more, massage it a bit, if that's okay. But I still think we need to get those people who are going to be communicating on an emergency basis together to talk about that. So Harry and Gordon and police department and fire department and county, all of those, what will it take to pull you all together? Do you want me to try and do that, or do you want to try and accomplish that?
I think the planning commission should approach the entities and say, let's get together and talk.
The planning commission?
No, the emergency planning commission,
Oh, okay, all right,
making a formal request.
okay. So maybe what I can do is find out convenient days and times. That would be good, at least for our commissioners who want to participate in that. I'm assuming Harry, Gordon, Dick, I don't know about you, Gary, if you would want to.
Well,
as
I'd be
well.
interested, definitely.
Mhm. So I'll see what I can do as far as requesting attendance at some meeting, some during the daytime.
Are you going to be including the fire chief and the police chief
Yes,
on this?
yes.
Then those would be the first people I talk to time-wise. And they're not
Right.
going to want to spend 2 hours at it. You might be able to get them for half an hour during a work day.
All it would take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to Dave about it.
Yeah,
Seriously.
I mean, so you need to, I think those are the first two people.
Mhm.
When I try to set something up, I find my people who are working and I accommodate them. And then I bring in the retired people who have a more flexible schedule.
Okay, so I will take that on and see if I can pull people together for some type of a meeting to talk about this. And maybe if you could give me some idea of what should be in that discussion, what types of things you would want to talk about, you would want to address.
In these department heads you're talking about.
Yes.
Chiefs.
When this meeting
I can
happens.
send you something. I think we discussed them somewhat tonight, but just put them on paper.
It's just basically a coordinated communication.
No, I would think we should include, at some point, the utility as well, because they're a player in all this.
Oh, those guys are so busy right now.
Oh, probably.
John Isadora and Wade Phillips never sleep.
At some point, they're a component and a player in this.
Yes.
And the state. OSP, I think only have one guy up here most of the time, but there's the state and highway folks. All are players in a major event.
Well, we could probably start small with
But the local
a
folks
smaller
first.
group, the local groups, and then expand from there. Let's see how that step goes first.
Yeah, once that's done, then we can, even coordinating with the ham thing, is the power capability to run this thing without commercial power. And that defines a solar requirement. Again, it's easy to do. You just need to know what the requirements are.
Well, you'd have to find it out in that
I don't know
meeting.
if there's any single person that's available from Calor either. They might be a player as well.
From where?
Calor, the
Oh, yeah,
emergency services.
that's true.
That's
Although they're not the same crews in town all the time. They rotate
Mhm.
quite heavily.
And it's just pretty much the emergency responders, and they do rotate through.
They do.
So we would want to go to whoever supervises them.
Yeah.
I think and talk to that person.
Where's Calor dispatch from?
Same one in Gold
Out of
Beach.
Law 2.
So they're sort of local.
Yeah. Okay. Tsunami signs. Installation. We have tsunami signs, more of them. 6.
We got 6 signs and 6 arrows.
And you have been told that we can attach them to stop sign posts. Okay, because that to me, the most counterintuitive to my mind is the 12th Street where there's a four-way stop. And what is that, 10th that goes past Port Side and goes to Coast Guard Hill?
Right.
I think they might have a tsunami, but they have a big one on 101. Oh, it's really raining. They have a big one on 101 that sends people west right there. And so we might need to make sure there's one right there where you turn to go up Coast Guard Hill, because they've got the state park sign there, but I don't think there's a tsunami evacuation route sign there. So that is important. Otherwise they're headed for, bye-bye land.
Well, I think the important thing is we need a subcommittee here to determine where those signs should be and then figure out how to get them up. Who's going to get them up, when they're going to get up. But I think,
Well, if Gary has them, well, we can get together and talk about that. And just,
Two of
to me,
you.
because the most vulnerable spot in this city for tsunami is the Hamlet
yes.
and Gear Circle. And so that's a thing that we need people every time they come out of their driveway to be going, oh, evacuation route that way. Oh, evacuation route. So it's like they're seeing it all the time, so they don't have to, because it could be night and it could be dark and you could be afoot instead of in your car.
So-
If you see something all the time, you're more likely to remember it. And those are the people I think we most need to. People up here, they're going to be able to figure out where 18th Street is.
So you and Gary will meet to determine where they go.
Yeah, and then we can put them up.
Oh,
I got tools.
all right.
It's going to have to quit raining. I don't work for free in the rain.
Good. Thank you, Mari. Okay. Under old business, education campaign. Gary and I were talking about that, on how to get that going, at least a little bit to get started. And instead of waiting for events before we put out a table and get things set up so that we can invite people to the table to see what we're doing and give them information and so forth, that we have a regular table that we set up around town occasionally, for instance, in front of Ray's, in front of the post office, and that we set up that equipment, and Gary has offered to put it in his place so it's all together, and then periodically one or two people can set up that table, spread out the information, and people will, I think, approach if it's set up in a place where you have a lot of traffic. How does that sound as far as an idea?
Oh, we're pretty enthusiastic, aren't we?
Excitement. Well, I'm willing to do that, and I'm willing to put together the table and the information. I don't know, Mari, if there's some information actually over the fire hall that we can use. And I'll look at FEMA, and I think, Gary, you have some information too. So I think it's just a matter of putting together what we already have and then displaying a to-go kit.
And Tagami has some stuff, and we don't have the same materials as I saw up at the Langlos Library, but I was up there and they had a little graphic comic book of what to do. It was far more communicative and Jeff Hughes would know where she got it, but I was carrying it around for a while. I gave it to somebody, who was interested in it, but it was, I think he did a presentation up there. And I know the city has some booklets, but they're a little bit dry, but this was, this was pretty good and kind of oriented toward, teenagers and it was, pictures and not too many words. So it's very appealing and you get flipped through it. I had one disagreement with it because they showed the initial earthquake happening under the ocean off the Pacific coast with horseshoe crabs going by. I was going, no horseshoe crabs.
Well, I think also maybe FEMA, I'll look on their website to see if they might have some materials. They usually do. And I'll call Sylvia
Oh,
and she'll have some things, I'm sure. So I'll do that. But if any of you also want to sit at a table every once in a while and talk to people about go bags.
I would do it on a nice day.
And I'm kind of thinking of a thing when I get toward, of course, we do stuff with the fire board or not with fire board, but the fire department. Dave runs a web page. I haven't checked with CTR when their free brush week is, but we always post something there. Get rid of your brush now, get your defensible space now.
Yeah.
I'm, negotiating with somebody to set up a thing at the Hamlet. And maybe, I want to talk to a couple of firefighters and go, make an appointment, I'll sit there for a day we got a little flamey sign looking thing at the fire department and make an appointment and we'll come over and look at your house with no obligation that you have to do this, but you may not want that firewood stacked up against the house and you see that 1 foot of needles on your roof, not gonna make it.
We have.
But that way you are invited onto the property.
Yeah.
And so that eliminates, we had a whole discussion of insurance and stuff. And they go into it knowing that they don't have to do it, but this would be a good idea.
Yeah, I know at least 2 of the fire department crew there who would do this.
Yeah, and I would just, say, well, let's make an appointment. When will you be
Yeah.
home? I'll come with this person. We'll walk around. We'll
Make an
point some
appointment.
stuff out. We actually many years ago, we used to go through some public facilities with the fire department and find things. We went through some of the elder care places
Yeah.
and, I just looked for not so much violations as bad ideas,
Yeah. So, Gordon, you kind of raised your hand a little bit there that maybe in good weather you might be interested in
Might be
doing this too. Oh, that's good. Okay, great.
Real quick, when the fire department people are doing that type of service around town when invited in, is there a possibility they could add a little verbiage about where your local evacuation zone is?
Yes, that's when you'd get that plug in there. Do you have a go bag?
Yeah.
Do you have shoes tied to your bed? Any of you got shoes tied
Just
to
a
your
little extra thrown into her.
Does anybody here have shoes tied to their bed?
We could have a lot of good information. on
See,
a
this is
table
the thing
like
that came out of Japan. In first world countries, earthquakes in first world countries, #1 injury is cut hands and feet on broken glass, leaving your house after you get out of bed. And I have told numerous people and they, I can always find my shoes. Look at that picture. You will not find your shoes. Your house will be a foot deep in everything that was on the walls.
Okay.
And, that wasn't the case in Haiti. The Haiti earthquake, it was largely trauma and broken limbs, but they don't have as much glass as we do.
Mhm.
And
No, it's a good idea. And all those points could be made. I don't know if there's any kind of
Tagami.
brochure that makes those. type of
Tagami
points.
has a whole website on that. That's one of the things that came out of the whole Great Oregon Tsunami Roadshow was here are some things that work in Japan. And nobody measures stuff the way the Japanese measure stuff. Keep really good statistics.
Okay, well, yes. Do you want to?
Is there any thoughts about doing a table during Jubilee?
Absolutely, a really bad time to try to promote information. I tried to do some last year at the pancake breakfast and,
Even though this year they're predominantly doing everything down Main Street?
We've tried that in the past too, and people are just directed towards something else. It's almost all.
Yeah.
yeah, it really is a frustrating thing.
Not a time.
You just feel like you're,
That's why I don't think the events work as well as just having a separate everyday table that people who aren't in a hurry or aren't focused on something else might stop.
And that's why I want to do this one where I'm going to be, sitting in somebody's out at the road by a friend's house. And I know a lot of people walk by there. I've been over there and there's just people coming out of the hamlet walking back and forth. And that's how you get them.
Mm,
Oh, Jennifer, what's happening? See Ruth? Oh, let's go look at your house. And then talk to your neighbor.
It's kind of like,
But it's kind of hard because I mean, there's a couple I know down there in the hamlet, and I go by to visit them. They're so enthusiastic about everything, and I'm just kind of going, oh man.
well, it's like
And
the
you got a fire
voter
trap happening,
registration.
and I don't know where to start because I don't know how to open that conversation in a lot of ways with a friend going, here's what you need to do. If I had another firefighter with me, I could.
All right, I think any commissioner comments at this time? We've covered the agenda items. None, okay. Any public comments? Okay, next meeting, April 24th at 2025. All right, so I'm gonna adjourn this meeting at, what do we got there?
By the way, who is doing the Jubilee this year? Who's running the Jubilee committee?
Katie,
Katie.
King is now head of the commission, I believe.
mhm,
Katie King. I guess I don't know.
Casey Kate.
Tasty Cake.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
Tasty
she is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She's
Ah.
heading up
Okay.
she's heading it up, and I can't.
I saw her name on the list. So.
Jen Bailey is still, she's like still involved.
And they're gonna have the trolley this year. That's,
I don't
Kate
know.
was telling me. If people will pay into it, I guess they've got to
I
be.
just know that their plan is to keep everything predominantly on Main
Mhm.
Street this
Which
year.
is a good idea. Meeting adjourned.
As opposed to,
Probably not.
oh,
Rock.
what's that?
Battle Rock this year.
Oh.